Hey everyone, welcome back to Pop Incursions. I'm Nico and today we are going to break down the first two episodes of Agatha All Along and delve into those theories. Why has a sigil been placed on Teen? Who is Nicholas Scratch? And who are the Salem Seven? Stay tuned.
Heard you guys were having a party.
Say what?
Avengers!
Sorry, what now?
Confusion is but the first step on the journey to knowledge.
Show some respect. She-Hulk smash.
It's Shang-Chi.
Higher, further, faster.
You need to back off.
Down, down, down the road to glory at the end.
So the first two episodes of Agatha All Along are out now and I absolutely loved them. I think the series is starting off really well. I think that high quality standard from WandaVision is definitely being carried over into Agatha All Along, and even though we've just met most of these characters, I'm super invested in their stories and their journeys. I want to know why Jennifer was bound. I want to know what Lilia has experienced over 400 years on the planet, what happened to Alice's mother. Obviously we want to know everything about Teen. I want to know what's the deal between Rio and Agatha, and also I think Katherine Hahn is amazing and is giving us really scrumptious performances, and this is why we get an Agatha show. Not only do we love it, not only have the fans actually asked for it, this is probably one of the shows that we actually did ask for it, and thankfully the Marvel gods heard it, received it, and gave us this. And with Katherine Hahn being such an amazing actress, this is how an Agatha show comes about. And I really think as well, Jack Schaefer is just a genius and she should be handed the keys to the magical corner of the MCU. She should write that Scarlet Witch film and give us plenty more things like Agatha All Along. Now let's start searching for those Easter eggs and breaking down the episodes. So episode 1 starts off with a Mayor of Easttown / True Detective style, and we see for the first time that Marvel Television logo, and on screen reads Seekest Thou The Road. And this is not only the episode title but also the first line in the Ballad of the Witch's Road. The Ballad of the Witch's Road is a ballad that all witches know and is necessary to sing to be able to enter and walk the Witch's Road. I really do think that it was one of the best musical numbers, alongside Agatha All Along of course, that Marvel has ever produced. And it seems that not only is it necessary for the Witch's Road, but the ballad is almost like an instruction manual where it also tells you basically how to survive the Witch's Road. So we see Agatha, or Agnes, as she is still in her nosy neighbour spell that Wanda placed on her, and we see her driving, and if you actually listen to her, she's humming the sound of the Ballad of the Witch's Road, especially the down, down, down the road part. And this foreshadows, obviously, that very soon, little does she know, she's going to be singing it for real this time. This crime scene seems to take place in those same woods that we saw the Sword agents drive through to access Westview in WandaVision, and Agnes is met by Herb, who we obviously met in WandaVision, who was a member of the Neighborhood Watch and now has graduated to a policeman. But let's remember, Herb is his Wanda name. His real name is John Collins. At the crime scene, a Jane Doe is found by the river, tipped off by an anonymous call, just like in Mayor of Easttown. But all things point to Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch. Not only does the body size and the very quintessential mommy Wanda jeans and a hoodie, but also those darkened fingertips to signify the corruption of the Darkhold. And of course, Agatha used to have these darkened fingertips as well. The only ID or evidence that accompanies this body is a Westview Library card with dates along the side, but no names or other information. We learned that the cause of death was blunt force trauma, almost as if something very big and very heavy maybe collapsed on top of this body. This would certainly be consistent with a certain Scarlet Witch who is assumed dead after the collapse of Mount Wundagore. While exploring the crime scene, Agatha or Agnes comes across a puddle where she sees a brooch, a very, very familiar brooch that of course Agatha took from her mother's corpse, Evanora Harkness, and has worn ever since. And this is a brooch of the maiden, the mother, and the crone, which we will get to later. The official intro plays, and it is a True Detective style intro with a True Detective style Ballad of the Witch's Road song as well. Now, as it plays, we see credits, but these are not the actor's credits or even the MCU character credits. These credits are using the names that Wanda gave to everyone in WandaVision, signifying that in Agnes's perception, we are still in this TV show and still in this realm that Wanda set up. It starts off with Agatha's credit, Agnes, but we see Agnes O'Connor, and I do not know why O'Connor is her surname, or maybe why she gave herself that. The other characters credited include Phil Jones, aka Harold Proctor, Norm Gentilucci, aka Abhilash Tandon, Dottie Jones, aka Sarah Proctor, Phil or Harold Proctor's wife, Herb Feltman, aka John Collins, Dennis Weber, aka the mailman and pizza delivery guy, but we never actually found out any name for him, and neither could the sword agents. And last but not least, the iconic Mrs Hart, aka Sharon Davis. The intro closes with, based on the Danish series WandaVision. This is a reference to another police procedural drama called The Killing, also known as Forbiddelsen in Denmark. The final title card reads Agnes of Westview, mirroring that of Mayor of Easttown. We then move to the Westview Library, who we see Dottie, aka Sarah Proctor, for the first time since WandaVision, and she retains her name because of course Agatha or Agnes is still under that spell. Agnes has come to the Westview Library because she wants to find out more about this library card that was found with the body at the crime scene. And Dottie says, who's the victim? Is she dead? And like I was thinking, Agnes says,
why do you assume it's a woman?
And this is another thing that makes me think maybe she knows more or is a little bit more involved than other Westview residents. Maybe she's also a witch. That's a huge theory ever since WandaVision. Dottie reveals that the book associated with this library card that was found with the victim is called Dialogue and Rhetoric, Known History of Learning and Debate. But she says,
this book wasn't checked out, it was stolen 3 years ago.
What else happened 3 years ago? Oh, the events of WandaVision, when Agatha was put under this spell. And who else stole a book? When Wanda stole the Darkhold from Agatha. Agnes then goes to explore through the library to find another copy of this book and comes across a bookcase full of burnt and charred books. And out of nowhere, the mailman / pizza delivery guy from WandaVision just pops his head through one of the bookcases and whispers, there was a fire. And he says, every last copy. This obviously insinuating that Wanda destroyed every last copy of the Darkhold at the end of the events of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which would have taken place 2 years previous this moment, and WandaVision took place 3 years previous to this moment. So we are in the year 2026. We then see Agnes walking into the Westview police station eating a donut in true stereotypical police form, and we meet Phil Jones, aka Harold Proctor, which would be Dottie or Sarah's husband, for the first time since WandaVision, and he has now become the police chief. In Agnes's office, we see in the background a picture of a young boy, and it's black and white to signify that it's old, and a little decorative rabbit beside it. This possibly hinting that Senor Scratchy, her familiar that we met in WandaVision, may be related to her son Nicholas Scratch. More on that later. Phil informs Agnes that the soil samples taken from the cadaver and the crime scene do not match, which was expected, to confirm confirm as well that the body was moved. But interestingly, he elaborates that the soil samples taken from the cadaver contain a specific microbial sediment unique to Eastern Europe, which is very interesting. And does this now confirm that the location of Mount Wundagore was in Eastern Europe? Very interesting. If this is true, the number one mountain candidate for where Mount Wundagore could be in Europe and Eastern Europe would be the Carpathian Mountains, and they almost certainly would pass through where Sokovia would be on the map. Then an FBI agent, Agent Vidal, who is actually Rio Vidal, the new original character created for the show, played by the brilliant Aubrey Plaza, has arrived, and while she's walking into the office, we can see on the office door Detective O'Connor. Again, why this is Agnes's surname in her TV reality mindset, no idea. Now, while Agent Vidal is here under the illusion of, working on the case, we know she's really here for much deeper reasons. Now, as Chief Phil tries to persuade Agnes to work with Agent Vidal, we get possibly one of the most funny lines from an MCU project, possibly rivaling M'Baku's bald-headed demon.
Eat my ass, Chief.
It's evident that Agatha's disdain for Rio surpasses that of Wanda's spell, but she can't remember why she doesn't like her. Rio says,
It's been a long time.
What are you doing here?
insinuating basically the events of the real world, and Agnes isn't interested in this.
The body was moved across state lines. Is that your play?
Rio again tries to almost break the fourth wall, but not with us, with Agatha, because remember, in her mind, it's like a TV show, and Rio wants to penetrate through that to get to the real world. So in a sense, Rio's trying to break the fourth wall with Agatha in relation to her TV nosy neighbor spell, but not with us, and says,
Is this really how you see yourself?
but again, Agnes doesn't, respond to any of this, attempting to break her free or get her out of the spell. My guess is all the previous interactions we've had with other Westview residents, particularly those who are being very specific about this case, shall we say, I believe that Rio may be feeding some of the dialogue or information to Agnes through the Westview residents. So for example, when Agnes was with Dottie and Dottie said, is she dead? And that the book wasn't checked out, it was stolen 3 years ago. I don't think Dottie is actually saying that to her. I think Rio may be making Dottie say that to her to try and communicate what's really going on. Why is she doing this and not just directly talking with her? Well, we've already seen that that doesn't necessarily work. We must remember that when Mount Wundagore collapsed and the presumed death of the Scarlet Witch happened, it did not completely break Agatha free from this spell, but it did shatter it, meaning there's an opportunity there to get her out of it. However, this spell is designed to keep Agatha as Agnes, the nosy neighbour, in a sitcom and prevent her from remembering her memories or any information or knowledge of the real world or who she really is. So this is why Agatha or Agnes is perceiving everything as if she's on a true crime show. And this is why I believe Rio is trying to feed it to her in little bits slowly from different people to try and communicate to her, Wanda's gone. You can break free from this spell. Let's get you out of it. But of course, because she's still under, at least partially under the spell, Agatha isn't going to perceive it the way, we normally would in real life. She's perceiving it as a TV show. And because it's to do with somebody dying and it's mysterious, she sees it as a crime show. Rio then asks Agnes,
You've lived here your whole life.
because we know in the real world, the answer is no. Agatha does not typically live in Westview. She only came to Westview after sensing the aftermath of the Westview hex that Wanda created 3 years ago. However, because of the spell Wanda put on her, Agatha or Agnes can't answer the question because she doesn't know the answer and she can't remember her life, essentially. Interestingly, as Rio is leaving, she says goodbye to Agnes in Spanish as she says,
Te veo.
which means I see you, or I'll see you, as in I'll see you around. Or what it reminded me of was when Wanda said,
I'll be seeing you, Agnes.
Rio Vidal, when I say it in a Spanish pronunciation, sounds very Spanish. So perhaps Rio is of some sort of Hispanic or Latinx descent, but of course time will tell. We then reunite with Norm, or Abhilash Tandon, for the first time since WandaVision. And we're in this jewellery store, and that's where Norm works. works, and Agnes is getting him to inspect the brooch that she found in the puddle in the crime scene. And Norm suspects that it is
North American, New England maybe, late 17th century, I guess.
known as the 1600s. And of course, this was the same century where Agatha had her own witch trial in Salem by her coven, where her coven tried to execute her for stealing knowledge above her age and station and using dark magic. And in turn, Agatha killed her coven and then took the brooch off her mother, Evanora Harkness. And this all happened in 1693, this same century that Norm is estimating. So he's actually doing a pretty good job, but I suspect this is actually Agnes is just thinking he's saying this when he's really not. Norm says
It's made from cowrie shell. Sea snail.
so the shell is the shell of the snail, and it represents spirituality in a lot of cultures actually. In North America, the indigenous Ojibwe people used them in ritual ceremonies, while in ancient Africa and Asia, they were viewed as an object with extraordinary spiritual power and was associated with fertility, protection from evil spirits, good luck and abundance. Norm also points out the triple goddess,
Triple goddess, maiden, mother, crone.
which of course is also being mentioned in the Ballad of the Witch's Road.
Maiden, mother, crone.
And I suspect we will learn a lot more about as the series continues. The triple goddess, each of which symbolizes a different stage in the female life cycle and a phase of the moon, each of which also rule over one of the realms of the heavens, earth or underworld. Norm opens the brooch, or I suppose locket now, and inside is a lock of dark hair. But whose hair could this be? On a very slim chance, it could be Agatha's mother, Evanora Harkness, or the two I'm really thinking it is either Rio Vidal's hair or a lock of her son's hair, Nicholas Scratch. And we're really starting to see something set up here about her son, but we will get into that as the video continues. Back in the office, Agnes is stumped by this library card, and she decides to take the first letter of each of the word and the title of the book. And wouldn't you know, it all comes together as Darkhold. And the author of the book is an anagram for Wundagore. This is the throne for the Scarlet Witch that was engraved by one of the first demons, Chthon, on top of Mount Wundagore, where he first engraved the forbidden incantations, which would later be transcribed into the Darkhold. We then see Agnes go home to her house, and this is the first time we are seeing Agatha's home since WandaVision. While in her home, we get a major reveal. We see Agnes in what looks to be a child's bedroom. There's a lot of witchcraft references in here, and we see some drawings, one of which has Nikki written at the top. We see a plaque for best vocals in the children's choir attributed to Nicholas Scratch, and there is rabbit decorations. Now, in case you're wondering, who is this? In the comics, Agatha had a son named Nicholas Scratch with an unknown father, and he actually ruled over New Salem in the comics, and he was the father of the Salem Seven. This is wild because before the episodes premiered, in one of the promos we saw what looked to be the Darkhold in a baby crib, and I had theorized that maybe Agatha exchanged her own son in exchange for the Darkhold. Now, while in the comics she had it with an unknown father, perhaps in the MCU she had this son with Rio Vidal, which may explain why Rio is quite vengeful. Also in WandaVision, where we first met Senor Scratchy, Agatha's rabbit, also could be her familiar. A lot of people speculated that that could be her son, especially because obviously in the name is Senor Scratchy and her son's name is Nicholas Scratch. So perhaps in this exchange for the Darkhold, her son became a demon and her familiar in the form of a rabbit. Now, I'm sure over the next few weeks we're going to have some terms and concepts that we've never come across before. So for this episode, we'll look at a familiar. Speaking of Senor Scratch, a witch's familiar are believed to be supernatural beings or spiritual guardians who protect and assist witches in their magical practices. They often manifest as animals, but can sometimes appear in human figures or human-like figures. However, unlike ghosts, they would be clearly defined, vivid with colour, and able to move and make noise. They are also believed to also be demons, so perhaps one of the demons we see in one of the trailers is actually one of their familiars. There's a knock at the door, and guess who? It's Rio Vidal, and she brought pizza and beer. While they enjoy this pizza and have a beer, I don't know about you, it gives off huge ex's previous relationship vibes. While they chat, Rio asks Agnes,
Do you remember why you hate me?
and candidly, Agnes says
No.
and this communicates both to Rio and the audience the strength of Wanda's spell. Even though it's shattered, it's still quite strong, and she cannot remember why she doesn't like Rio. While in Agnes's sitting room, we hear a noise upstairs. Agnes goes up to investigate and finds a teenage boy has broken in. All we can see is him standing in front of her closet, and he escapes through the window, but Agnes chases him. After a stumble and a chase, Mrs Hart, or Sharon Davis, knocks the boy over with her car. Thankfully, he's alive and uninjured, and while we see that this is Teen, played by Joe Locke, and once Agnes arrests him and brings him to the police station for interrogation. In the police station, Teen won't give his name, and there's no record of him in the system, and he didn't actually steal anything, he just broke in. As Agnes interrogates him, Teen seems to know a lot about Agatha, and he pokes the bear and the witch bites back. Teen says,
What were you after?
The road.
i.e. the witch's road, but in the spell from Wanda, Agnes has no idea what he's talking about. Agnes notices that Teen's fingertips are slightly darkened, almost similar to the corpse in the crime scene that had darkened fingers. Now, to us, we know that this normally means corruption of the Darkhold, but Teen says this is just from the ink from doing his fingerprints in the police station. However, Agnes just sees the darkened fingers, and after his reference to the road, i.e. the witch's road, but of course Agnes doesn't remember that, so she's just seeing a suspicious teenage boy who has darkened fingers and is referring to some road, just like the crime scene. Agnes suspects him to be somehow related to the body that was found. Agnes presses Teen about who she is and what happened to her, and on showing Teen a photo of the crime scene, on second glance, they're actually just photos of flowers. Agnes looks to the room where Rio was, and Rio's gone, and on second glance, it was just a painting. Teen then begins chanting in Latin, and the chair he was in has now changed appearance and now resembles the chairs in Agatha's sitting room. Confused and slightly suspicious, confused and concerned, Agnes makes Teen spend a night in jail. Shook from her recent confusions with Teen and second-guessing everything, Agnes decides to go to the morgue or the mortuary to actually see, is this body real? Am I going crazy? And to validate her feelings. As Agnes enters the examination room, there is no body. But Agnes says to herself, to remind herself,
She was in her late 20s, green eyes, 5'7".
On second glance, the body is there. Agnes approaches the body and says,
You're the color of...
and just as she says that, we see hair resembling that of a scarlet colour. Instead of an ID tag on her feet, she has that library card that was found at the crime scene. And this time, beside the last date, October 13, in Reading, W. Maximoff appears. At this point, Agnes has tears running down her face, and we hear Rio say,
Case closed then?
Agnes asks Rio, how did she die? Rio scoffs and says, wrong question.
That witch is gone, and all the copies of the Darkhold with her.
Leaving you trapped in her distorted spell. You don't have to stay there, do you? Agatha starts to take her clothes off because she's too hot, but as she removes one layer, another layer appears. Rio says,
Yes, claw your way out.
the first layer is the purple jumper that Agatha wore in the last 2 to 3 episodes of WandaVision or the 2000s Modern Family era. The next layer is the tracksuit from the 90s episode. The next layer is the 80s jazzercise outfit. The next layer is the 70s outfit, and finally it's the black and white 50s outfit. Rio says there are 2 Jane Does in this case.
And you know her name, so what's yours?
Agatha looks confused and looks down at the library card, but now above the W. Maximoff beside January 20th appears in purple ink a Harkness. Agatha takes off the 50s outfit and now we're back in her home and she's naked. Finally freed from Wanda's spell, I think that everything that Agatha had perceived was going on and that we saw was just going on in Agatha's mind. So when speaking to Herb about the crime scene, they were really just talking to one another over their fence. When visiting Dottie in the library, she probably just visited Dottie's home. And we know that when she interrogated Teen in the police station, it was actually her home, and she was even able to see parts of it as she broke out of the spell. Agatha, being the bad you-know-what that she is, she just walks out completely naked into her neighbourhood to ask Herb what's going on. It's giving an Adam and Eve type of feel for sure. We learn that Agatha has been in this state for 3 years, which matches the ending of WandaVision, and this makes it fall 2026. We also learn that in Westview, after what has happened in WandaVision, just like the Dark Lord, you cannot say the Scarlet Witch's name.
Wanda. Ooh, we try not to say her name.
Agatha goes immediately back inside and her first instinct is to use her magic to see that she still has it, and much to her dismay, she has no powers. She goes down to her basement where of course we saw her bewitched basement in WandaVision, but it's just a washing machine and a normal basement, no bewitched basement whatsoever, no potions, no Darkhold, nothing. We do see that Senor Scratchy had survived all this time, but I'm sure he could probably survive anything. We hear a thump upstairs. Agatha goes up and lo and behold, in her closet tied up is Teen, because when she meant he was spending the night in jail, it really meant
you're spending the night in the tank.
You know, it wasn't real. He wasn't really in jail. He was in Agatha's house. Agatha says to Teen,
But if you're real and not a figment of my imprisoned mind.
And Agatha is realizing that all those moments with Rio Vidal really took place. And impeccable timing, Rio Vidal shows up in full Nancy from the Craft vibes with her dark outfit and her dagger that she seems very attached to, and took the door off the hinges with her powers. In an iconic tribute to the film The Craft, which is about witches, I highly recommend, Rio flies over to Agatha against the wall with her dagger and says,
I've missed you.
I hate you.
And come on, this is giving a lot of chemistry, a lot of X and tension vibes between the two of them. Rio said, how long has it been, Agatha?
You acquired the Darkhold. You hid behind all that dark magic.
Which explains why only now Rio and the Salem Seven are seeking revenge, because Agatha is vulnerable. She has no power. She doesn't have the Darkhold. Whereas before, she was able to use all of that to hide her location, to protect her, and to obviously steal power from other witches. Agatha and Rio fight, and it really gives some sadistic vibes to me. Agatha says,
You can't kill me. It's not allowed.
Now, that might be some throwaway comment, but this is the MCU, and it's a WandaVision spin-off. I don't think it's just a throwaway comment. I think this could refer to some sort of agreement or pact that was made a long time ago, maybe when they were in a relationship together, maybe if they had a son named Nicholas Scratch together, and whatever way they made him or acquired him or made a deal about the Darkhold meant that they can't harm one another or anything like that. So we shall see. Agatha says, let me get my purple back. And Rio says, I'm not the only one that wants to see you dead.
Burn or hang or drown.
And Agatha says, there are no new options. Because of course, those three options were the way witches were killed during those witch trials. Rio says, I'll be sure to tell them where you are. And Agatha asks, who specifically? And Rio says, the worst of them, the Salem Seven. I expect you'll see them at sundown. In a comment, Agatha says, you don't have a heart, and Rio says,
Yes, I do. It's black, and it beats for you.
and I mean, come on, that's really putting a lot of fuel on that romance rumour fire, and I'm so here for it. But also, remember that black heart comment for episode 2. Rio leaves by saying Te veo again, and Agatha remembers she kidnapped Teen, and the episode ends. What a premiere. I really enjoyed the first episode. It was very exciting. It explained some things while also setting up new things and throwing more spanners into the theory mill, and it introduced 2 new very good characters that I am really intrigued by. So I really hope you enjoyed our episode 1 breakdown. A lot of sleep was sacrificed to work as fast as I could to get this out. Let me know in the comments below what you thought, and do you have any interesting theories theories, or what are your theories about some of the things going on already. Make sure you check out my socials in the description below, and be sure to give the video that like and click that subscribe button. I'm Nico for Pop Incursions. See you next time.